We all love it. Let's talk to Amin Elhassan about that and more. Formerly of the Suns front office and now with Meadowlark Media, and of course the host of the Levitard Show and host the Oddball podcast with Charlotte Wilder. Amin Elhassan joins us on Willard and Dibs 95.7 The Game. Amin, how you doing?
How's it going, guys? Good to be with you.
It's fantastic to have you. What do you think about that idea? Without getting too far into the weeds of the how you do it, how about Kevin Durant and the Warriors getting the band back together?
I think, I just don't see it happening for several reasons. I think for Kevin specifically, well, first of all, the Phoenix Suns I don't think would entertain that sort of move, because what it would basically be kind of a tear down, or kind of like, let's start this thing over. And I don't think Matt Ishbia is in that kind of frame of mind. Matt Ishbia, the principal owner of the Suns. But the other part of it is Kevin's been searching to kind of distance himself from what he accomplished in Golden State. And specifically, Kevin definitely has sought to distance himself from playing that style of basketball. So going back to kind of being an auteur, this savant who does everything isolation and basically can get his bucket any way that he wants. He doesn't want to come off of down screens and split action and all that stuff. If he did, he would have done it in Brooklyn. He would have done it in Phoenix. But he's resistant to that kind of play, I guess, because he finds it insulting, or maybe deep down, like I said, it just reminds him of his time in Golden State, where he wasn't his version of himself. He was kind of the Warriors version of himself. So I just think there's a lot of, baggage there from him specifically that will kind of prevent that from happening.
Would that also prevent him from going just flat elsewhere? Because you watch the Phoenix Suns, and I coined the phrase hate ball, because it looks like they hate each other, and they play with that certain level of hatred for playing together. Can you imagine them trying to run this back in Phoenix with the big three?
Yeah, I don't think they hate each other. I don't think there's any kind of, or even hate playing with each other. I don't think it's a personal thing, and I don't think it's a basketball thing. I don't like playing with this guy. I think it's just, this is a team that didn't have structure. Without a point guard, you need to have a structure to your offense, and they didn't have that. Now, whether that's because Coach Vogel didn't come with a structure, or whether because the guys were resistant to a structure, either way, it needed to exist. It did not exist, and what you saw was the difficulty of playing pickup basketball in an organized league. These teams know what they're doing. The Timberwolves had a week basically to game plan to go against the Suns. The Suns had the same week. Apparently they didn't game plan anything because they played 3 games playing the same dumb way. And then in game 4, so what if we put Durant at the 5 and that's your chance to win? But of course, then they don't execute in the end. As far as answering your question about are they going to run it back? Look, I think in a perfect world, they'd probably not do the Beal deal. In a perfect world now, they'd find someone to be the taker for Bradley Beal's deal. That's not going to happen. He's got someone in the neighborhood of $160 million, 3 years left on his deal. So you're not going to see a bunch of people lining up to take Bradley Beal's contract on. And so they're kind of stuck with what they have. I don't think they'd trade Durant unless it were something that would keep them as a competitive team. They definitely don't want to trade Booker. He's the youngest of the 3. He's the face of the franchise. He's their homegrown talent. Unless Booker says, get me out of here, I don't think he'd be on the move. So you're kind of almost stuck with, all right, these are our 3. How do we get a better supporting cast?
I mean, how do you balance what the Warriors are looking at in a general sense? Steph is 36, still really good. He has aspirations for the rest of his career, but they've got to balance the win now versus build for the future thing. How would you suggest they go?
I would suggest they just try to win now. I mean, look, they tried doing both, and it didn't work. You can't. It's too hard in this league unless you just absolutely nail a draft pick of a player who's not only got incredible upside, but also is ready to play right now. And they didn't do that. They got a bunch of guys who needed time and development and, to mixed results. I think Kuminga and Moses Moody rounded out by the end into pretty good rotation players, but still not quite good enough. one of the things I always talk about the Warriors at their height of their success. Yes, they had Durant and Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. Yes, that's amazing. But what people all kind of glossed over was their supporting cast, their role players. They were all really, really, really high IQ, smart guys who had been successful elsewhere. Andrew Bogut, former number 1 overall pick, and an all-star. Sean Livingston, former top 5 pick, right? Andre Iguodala, an all-star, right? David West, an all-star. Leandro Barbosa, former 6th man of the year. But you go up and down the roster, they had guys that knew how to play, and they knew what their role was. Even the last championship, when you talk about Otto Porter and Bielitsa and Gary Payton, these were guys that knew how to play, right? They weren't young guys trying to find their way. Compare and contrast with what they have now, it's some young guys are trying to find their way, and Chris Paul was 155 years old. It's just not the same situation that they've had in the past. And so I think, is there a world where you can keep Steph, Clay, and Draymond and compete for a championship? Absolutely. But like the Phoenix Suns, you got to get way better with your supporting cast because what they have right now, it just wasn't good enough.
So is that the upgrade? So is that the upgrade they need? Is it to the supporting cast, or is there another player?
Is the real tradable asset, like I said, is Chris Paul's minimally guaranteed contract. I think it's guaranteed for $1 million, $2 million on the books, even though he makes about 18. So what that means is you can go out there, trade for someone's contract from a team that is in some sort of dire financial dollars in salary relief. That's your biggest chip that you have working for you. That and some first-round draft picks very, very far in the future. Other than that, like I just don't know. But at the same time, that's why Mike Dunleavy gets the big bucks. He's got to figure it out. This is the mess that he created in part along with Joe Lacob and Peter Guber. So now they've got to find their way out of this mess.
What do you think of Jonathan Kuminga, not only as a player but as a potential trade chip for the Warriors looking to get better in the short term?
I think he's a guy that has value out there, especially the way he finished the season. He really showed up and showed out in the second half of the season, really right after he called out Steve Kerr and saying, hey, how am I supposed to develop if my minutes are always inconsistent? So I think, as a defensive talent, he's got a lot of promise. As an offensive talent, he's still developing, particularly that jump shot, but you can see him getting better. I think you can get something. Again, what is it that you're going to get, right? So now, if you're talking about a Chris Paul for salary relief and then Jonathan Kuminga for upside and let's say a first-round pick, what does that get you out there? And the reality is, I don't know. I don't know how many teams would value that to the point of giving you a superstar. The other thing is also, if we're talking about stars out there, who's available? Who are the guys that you can go out and get that could work? Is DeMar DeRozan a name? And not just a name in terms of like a recognizable person, but a guy who brings something to the table that the Warriors need, which is a second scorer outside of Steph Curry. And then again, like what's that going to take in order to get him to go there? It's not an easy situation, and I don't envy the position that the Warriors front office is in.
What do you think LeBron's going to do?
Well, let me say it this way. I think he stays depending on what happens with his son. I think he's put it in his mind that like playing with his son is a priority for him at the end of his career, right? I know people are saying, well, is he going to retire? He's not going to retire, guys. Come on. You think he's just going to walk out like, enough of this. I've had enough. No, when he retires, he wants the Kobe treatment. He wants the pomp and the circumstance of going in every arena and getting a little video tribute shown to him, and everyone gives him flowers and praises and things like that. He's not just going to walk away. I think like I said, I'm not saying that wherever his son goes, he'll go too, but I think he's going to opt out of his deal and then sit back and watch what happens with his son. And depending on where he lands, and if there's a need for him and an availability for him there, then I think he might go. If not, I think he just says, okay, I'll stay another year with the Lakers and see what happens there, or maybe sign a 2-year deal with an option on the second year, so you can always have that flexibility.
I mean, great to have you, man. Thank you so much for hopping on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.